Okay, going back to this book that you were talking about technology and philosophy. I just wanted to know what are the main trends in like technology and philosophy.
Well, really, main trends are related to environmental philosophy because given the technologies we have, we've noticed problems that we never anticipated with carbon gases, methane, all the problems of global warming that are related to the technologies that we have. The fact is, we kind of opened up Pandora's box with a lot of modern technologies, and we have risks that we never anticipated.
Yeah,
I mean, it was
like
pretty simple when we invented a car to get from point A to point B, but we didn't anticipate the greenhouse gases that
Yeah.
come with the car.
Yeah, and the accidents and stuff like that, and the roadways being built. Yeah.
Precisely. So you end up with all of these risks that you're not thinking about once a technology is developed. And so one of the main areas in philosophy of technology deals with the assessment of those risks, questions of ethics about the creation of the technology. Can we create the technologies that minimize the risks, and things like that are important questions in philosophy of technology. Now, I think one of the most important things for us to do is to learn to think more systemically. So in my classes at MDC, I've been talking about how we create particular technologies, but those become embedded in a techno-system.
Yeah.
So when we have the car, we end up with other things.
With roads and police stations and like things like that.
Yeah, car repair
Like
shops,
gas
tire
stations,
centers, suburbs that we
yeah.
can now build. We end up with a concrete jungle. So we get a system that supports the car. We get a reliance on big oil.
Yeah.
We get an industry. I mean, we've had wars that have been related
Yeah, to oils
securing oil contracts and things like this. So then we get the effect of that whole techno system on the Earth system generally. And so what we're seeing now as one of the major concerns is global warming as it's related to technologies. Now, those are some of the negative outcomes of technologies, and yet the only way that we're probably going to mitigate those things or counter some of those problems is by using new technology. So people are considering ways that we might zap carbon out of the atmosphere or some things like this. We are in a technological world. We are in some kind of a techno system, and we will have to come up with technological solutions to some of these problems. The difficulty is, can we do that without unforeseen risks and consequences that are, as great or greater than the problems we're trying to solve and so on. But we're definitely already in the midst of a kind of techno-natural world.
Is it technology to fight technology, basically?
Right, if you will. Yeah. So there, in the early philosophy of technology, some of the concerns were, or some of the voices were for going back to nature, kind of returning to a pre-technological, a pre-modern technological era or something. But that seems really impossible given the population of the Earth and some things like that. But beyond that, I teach bioethics. That's one area, and there are a whole lot of concerns coming up regarding technology and ethics.
GMOs and stuff.
Right. We now have the technological possibility to change genetic structures of plants and animals and to clone humans and to change genetic structures of humans. How far should we go in any of that? What should be allowed? This very week in China, there was a scientist who manipulated the genes of an embryo so that it would be immune to AIDS. But now the government has come out criticizing that person and curtailed that project. But that's the kind of thing that will be occurring in the future. People are going to have to be addressing this concern, have questions about designer babies, all sorts of things about a designed GMO universe.
Like, for instance, getting rid of like diseases like what you call it, like a bunch of diseases and mental illnesses like from children and stuff like that.
Sure, if we knew enough, then we could then
like autism.
Do pre-genetic screening. We could choose to implant zygotes that were healthy rather than endangered, right? So I mean, there's some work like that that goes on as our ability to basically predict and understand which zygotes would be carriers improves. We could do that better, but those kinds of interventions are ethically concerning to many people also, because a zygote is an inseminated egg, and the question for many people is that a human life? And then given the ethical sensibilities and cultural conflict around that issue, we have a real set of concerns. So, bunch of issues. I mean, we can even mention more. What are the effects of cell phones and technologies on the way we interact with each other? So many things. Some of the effects of those are great. The apps we have can facilitate social protests in countries that have oppressive governments, and they've been used for the resistance in the Arab Spring. These were very, very fundamental to helping social protest with the outbreak of democratic movements. On the other hand, the way that the cell phone affects our interaction with each other is we sit in a room full of people, isolated from everybody in the room, and chatting with people in the next...
Walking in the streets, not paying attention,
and those kinds of things, yeah. So there are lots and lots of issues, and it's an increasingly really important area in philosophy.